Sound travels amazing distances over water. So people who live in the marina may already know that a few months ago, I moved from Noe Valley to a houseboat in Sausalito. They heard El Nino slamming my new home into the dock, followed by my screams. As I staggered like a drunk across the floor of my plunging, rolling, floating home, the term preferred by the Homeowners Association, I longed for the tamer perils of city life, such as muggers, car thieves, and red light runners. There's much about houseboat living that appeals to me, but riding out gale force winds isn't on the list. A little planning would have eased the transition from land to water, but I move the way I fall in love, full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes. In my right mind, I wouldn't have moved to a houseboat during the worst storms of the century, but I wasn't in my right mind. The braid of streetcars that screeched and whined past my Church Street house had driven me crazy. And when Willie Brown announced that they were here to stay and threw in a kingly, "Get used to it," I put my Victorian on the market, sold it in 5 days, and moved to the docks. On the plus side, I learned that I don't get seasick, something that it might have behooved me to check out beforehand. On the minus side, I came that close for days. I could have sworn that fish were swimming in my stomach. Focus on a fixed point, counseled a friend who's an avid sailor. There were no fixed points. Inside and out, the world was in motion. On a cold, rainy, gusty morning, when the boat was pitching so much I could barely stay on my feet, I called another friend, one who's lived on the houseboats for years. "Is this as bad as it gets?" I asked, eager for reassurance. He cackled maniacally and did his imitation of the ancient mariner. "Hey, they say the lucky ones die." I threw a toothbrush into my bag and fled to the Caribbean for 2 weeks. When I returned, my houseboat and I entered a honeymoon phase. Relatively speaking, the weather improved. I unpacked, slept the deep sleep of the innocent, or at least the naive, and went for long walks along the marshes. From a book on water birds, I learned to tell a blue heron from a blue heeler. And in case El Nino should come back, bought a powerful flashlight and some rope. Thus equipped, if it did return and knock the power out again, at least I'd be able to hang myself. Peace at last. After a couple of hours running errands one Saturday morning, I returned to a weirdly altered landscape. In the berth next to mine, where a battered small boat had been tied, stood a new one the size of the Exxon Valdez. Still under construction, it blocked my light and views and crowded so close I could reach out my window and grasp the rail of its entry. I'd been keel-hauled. It hadn't occurred to me that just by hitching them up to tugboats, you can move houseboats around like toy boats in a bathtub. Heavy construction isn't permitted in a berth, and the monstrous boat had to move out. It's returning any day, though, and rather than get out the rope, I've taken out a loan against the houseboat I live in and bought a second floating home. It's in a wider berth than mine, with a water view that can't be blocked. My plan is to switch the boats in the berth, then turn around and sell the second boat, now installed in my old berth, but not right away, because it still needs a few cosmetic touches, such as a roof and walls and floors, that sort of thing. If this keeps up, I'll be the Donald Trump of the docks. My San Francisco house never moved. I never had pigeons in my bedroom, or gulls cracking clams on my roof, or wondered if the holding tank for the sewage system was full. And it was time for a service called, so help me, Pump a Turd. In retrospect, I don't know how I stood the tedium. And this is the update. When I was thinking about reading here this morning, I thought, gee, this is a 13-year-old piece. Maybe I should tweak it a bit. So I did a little update. This is sort of the way my houseboat life is now. I have to reassure house guests that they're not hearing rifle fire. Those sharp cracks are gulls opening mussels on my skylight. Raccoons had a moonlight picnic on my doormat not long ago. I found a neat pile of chicken bones when I went to get my newspaper, and they weren't even my chicken bones. After 13 years in my boat, I feel uneasy when I remember that I sleep over my sewage holding tank. One reason that I left my Victorian house in San Francisco was that I had my car stolen from the curb right in front of it twice. Now that I live on the docks, I've only had my car stolen once. The part that I liked best was that it was stolen from a parking place right beneath the Marin Crime Watch sign. It took me a year, and it cost me thousands of dollars to move from one berth to another after the boat that I compared to the Exxon Valdez moved in next door. But the episode ended well because I've now got a terrific view of Mount Tam. Of course, the same thing could happen again, although it's unlikely. I've never lived before where real estate moves around. But it gives you the perfect occasion for complaining, there goes the neighborhood. Some other reasons that I stay and that I've asked the harbor management if when I die, I can have a Viking funeral in the lagoon. Oh, thank you, Stewart. I figured that they can, tie me to the pier, set fire to my boat, and push me out there. The perfect mix of privacy and community is here. When anyone is in trouble on the docks, everyone rallies round. And the rest of the time, your house is your floating castle. I had some local celebrity when I moved here. My main dock neighbors protected my privacy by telling anybody who was looking for me, she lives on the next dock. Since the docks are a maze to newcomers, people I'd invited for dinner sometimes wandered around for an hour looking for the next dock. But they turned up eventually, and they marveled at the beauty of the lights reflected in the water, the inky silhouette of Mount Tam, and their sense of having wandered into Atlantis or maybe Brigadoon. I never stop marveling at these things myself, or the pleasures of casual schmoozing with my neighbors when we meet in our endless toing and froing up and down the docks. My partner is another houseboater, and when the other is waiting and we turn up half an hour late, we explain, I got docked. And I'm proud of life skills that I couldn't have imagined I'd acquire. Here's how to get a seagull out of your bedroom. Wait till it stops flying around and lights. Then drop a bath towel over it very gently. Next, pick up the towel-covered bird and launch it through an open window, avoiding the beak end. Finally, clean up the gull poop. I recommend a pry bar and a small blowtorch. I can also tell you how to fish a gold earring out of the water where it somehow propelled itself. Wait for a low tide so that you can see it in the mud. Then tape a kitchen sieve to a broom with electrical tape and scoop it out. If you're female, once you've got your earring back, belt out a couple of choruses of I Am Woman.